Thank you for joining me today, dear friends. I want to have a quick look at webhook and REST APIs today. And the main goal for this video is to explain to you in a very plain words what's the difference between webhook and other REST API calls. And also to give you a short example in Azure, how we can integrate Azure with item tools like ServiceNow or other tools using secure webhooks. So this is mainly theory, and then you can test it for yourself to do practice. So let's have a quick look first at REST APIs, right? What is it? REST API is a web request. Normally, here I have my Postman open. Postman is a very good tool that you can use to build specific API web requests and to test it properly to make sure your API calls work. That's one of the most common tools which is used by developers. And it's quite customizable, so you can select different types of requests. So let's have a look. You see here I have post request, right? And if I click on this option, I get different options here like get, post, put, patch, delete, head, and options. So for example, get request, right? And then I would specify endpoint URL to which my request will be sent. And it is similar like a call in the browser, right? I send this request to a specific web service, and the web service gets something back to me. So I get something in return. Of course, normally I would have some kind of authorization. So for example, with API key or with some kind of authentication, I would connect to this endpoint and provide a request. So to get is like a kind of a push, or I mean pull for information. I ask from the server to return information to me. So it's kind of a pull-in from the server to the client. And other type of requests, for example, post, put, patch, or delete, this would be the push. So I need to change the information to modify it, things like that. And webhook, the one that I want to mention, it's a post request. So what would it normally mean? Let's get to the board here and have a quick look. As I mentioned, for the push of information, let's say we have a server, right? We could have like a web service, and to this web service, if I send a get request, it's for information pull, right? And me as a client, who would be a client here? Okay, so this would be a small client. I would get specific information, right? And also I can do the opposite from the client or from another server. I can push information using post as an example, and then it goes to the web service, and this web service sends information to a database or something like this if I have a database in the backend. So the difference between pull and push, for example, webhook, right? When I work with webhooks, webhook is always a push request, right? So let's say here on my client, I have a specific alert. This alert gets triggered, right? And then when the alert is triggered, then this webhook fires and it sends this alert or event back to the web service. So that's what happens basically with webhook. Let's say with GET request, if I want to push information, I want to pull information here, then I can do it in a timely manner. Let's say every minute I send a GET request, and this request pulls the information back to the client. And with a post or webhook, I can just monitor when the event happens, then do the specific push. So the advantage of using a webhook, you do not have to check constantly if something happened, right? It just gets triggered when the event happens. So that's kind of a cool thing. And yeah, webhook has specific URL, some parameters, authentication, things like that. And then it's just a type of REST API request of a type post, kind of. I hope it's clear. And let me give you an example here. So here I have this logical diagram open for Azure and ServiceNow integration. And what happens basically here is that when we integrate Azure with some other tool, ServiceNow is a tool where you can create tickets, right, to manage different incidents. A lot of companies are using that. So let's say we have this scenario when Azure Alert gets fired. Let's say my service plan is down, or I don't know, my VM is broken. Then I have this action group, and this action group fires a secure webhook action and sends this post request that I mentioned to the ServiceNow. And on the ServiceNow side, we have Azure Monitor app, which is registered there. And so it accepts this request and then it sends information to the database. And of course, one more point here, you see this OAuth. So this is authentication against Azure Active Directory. So this is not a simple webhook, it's a secure webhook, meaning that a specific identity is used in Azure, which is checked against Azure Active Directory to make sure it's there, right? So and what happens here, right? ServiceNow does not need to check constantly if alert happened or not. It's also possible to set up REST API calls in this manner, but with a webhook, as long as the alert happened, it triggers this post web request and it sends message to ServiceNow and the ticket is generated. So this is a simple example how you can think of webhooks. So a lot of times it's used in those type of scenarios when we need to generate an alert, and based on this alert, we need to create an incident or things like that. So I hope it's been helpful to you and you get an idea about webhooks now. So enjoy, happy learning, and have a good day. Bye bye.